days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Going to be talking about the 49ers defensive evolution. And of course, we talked about it on offense, and things changed there with personnel moving on and Kyle Shanahan's use of it. Now, with the defense, it gets a little bit more interesting because not only do you have different personnel, you also have a different defensive coordinator. And yes, Robert Saleh has been in San Francisco before. He's coached with Kyle Shanahan. And really, he's the one that kind of put together the blueprint for what the 49ers defense was going to be. But a lot has changed. Robert Saleh has changed. The league has changed. And with trends in the league changing, you also have to change some of your philosophies. And we've seen Robert Saleh do that in his time in San Francisco, just from what he did in 2017 compared to what he did his last season in San Francisco in 2020, but also what he did with the New York Jets. And I know that he wasn't the defensive coordinator with the New York Jets. That was Jeff Ulbrich. But it doesn't mean Robert Saleh's influence wasn't felt all over that defense. And it also doesn't mean that he wasn't paying attention to what teams were doing to that defensive scheme and how they were attacking him. Now, he had good results with the New York Jets in 2022. The defense was really, really good. And yeah, he had some key elements in the secondary. He had Quinnen Williams up front. They drafted really well when it came to edge rushers. In fact, they even have one of those edge rushers, and he was undrafted with the 49ers now in Bryce Huff. So we know that Robert Saleh has a pretty good understanding of what defenses are having to deal with now in the NFL as offenses continue to evolve and continue to find new ways to attack, whether that is spreading you out and trying to take advantage of their speed against maybe your unathletic defensive players, or that is bringing you in tight and taking advantage of you being too athletic and not big and strong enough to be able to handle their run game. That's something that Kyle Shanahan has been taking advantage of for a while. He loved to go to 21 personnel, which is 2 running backs, 1 tight end, get you in your base set, and then run you over. You have been worried about covering in space, going against these other 31 teams in the NFL, and you're sitting back, and now San Francisco comes in and they want to run the football down your throat, and it became a problem, and Kyle Shanahan was very successful with that. So through this process from 2017 to really the beginning parts of 2024, Robert Saleh has went through an evolution himself. And with that, it's going to evolve this defense. But it's not just as simple as Robert Saleh's evolution, but also the evolution of the current roster the 49ers have. Because there are definite signs and signals to what they're going to be doing by the type of players that they went out and got. One of the first things that came up was that the pro scout staff and also, the college scouting staff got together with Robert Saleh, and they looked at this team. After Robert Saleh had evaluated the current roster, they looked at this team and they said, okay, what do you want? What do you need? Here's how we evaluate players. Is that going to work? And they came to a consensus. So everything that has happened so far with the addition of new players, whether that was in free agency or that was via trade or in the draft, has been to fulfill Robert Saleh's plan. And they're selecting players that he has identified fit particularly well within what he needs to do. And so what I've done is I've pinpointed some certain areas that the 49ers need to evolve at, or that Robert Saleh needs to evolve at, and to get this defense to where it needs to get. We do know that we trust Robert Saleh. He's got the ability to do it. He's built a defense in San Francisco before. He built a defense with the New York Jets. This is a proven commodity. But how exactly does the 49ers defense evolve in 2025? Well, it needs to, number one. We're going to go through all that in this episode. Please like and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, I really appreciate it. If you're listening to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, you feel I deserve it, give it a 5-star rating. That's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you are going to bet with Bet Online. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your sports betting action. And with baseball season in full swing and football season around the corner, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From Major League Baseball, UFC, to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Head to the website today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. BetOnline, the game starts here. So first off, you have to see where you were to see where you're going. And so I looked up what was going on with the 49ers defense last year under Coach Nick Sorensen, and there were a couple things that stood out. Number one, the 49ers were actually pretty good in one area in particular, and that was pass defense. Now, when you say they're pretty good, it usually means that they've done pretty good when it comes to yards that they've given up and things like that. Well, there's also a counter effect to that. So the 49ers only gave up 192.8 yards per game per game last year on average. They allowed 25 passing touchdowns, which is pretty in line with some of the top teams in the league. For instance, the Eagles gave up 174 yards, and they gave up 22 touchdowns. So it gives you an idea of kind of where the Niners were. They were kind of up there to the top. But why you can't just look at that stat and not the rest is to see that the 49ers were giving up 124.6 yards per game on the ground, which was 18th best. Part of the reason the 49ers coverage stats were better was because their run defense was so bad. And if don't have to throw it if you can run down someone's throat the entire game. So the 49ers run defense really was helping the 49ers pass defense continue to look a lot better. Now, we are having some movement when it comes to secondary players. Out goes Charvarius Ward. Out goes Talanoa Hufanga. Out goes Isaac Yedem. Those were all players who saw significant snaps last season for the 49ers. So the pass defense is in a little bit of a state of flux, but you saw guys step up, right? We saw Deommodore Lenoir continue to elevate. Renardo Green stepping into his own last year, getting a lot of really good playing time. And so he's somebody they could build on. So run defense, not so good. Pass defense was a little bit better, but probably a lot of that had to do with how bad the run defense was. Now, scoring defense, not good for the 49ers last year. They gave up 25.6 points per game. That ranked 27th, and that was tied for 27th, worst in the league. They could have easily been one of the bottom, four teams in the league when it comes to points given up per game. The worst for the 49ers defense had to be the red zone defense, where they finished 31st best in allowing touchdowns at 68.4%. That's ridiculous. And 68.4% of the time that a team got in the red zone, they scored a touchdown. Only the Dallas Cowboys were worse, and they gave up 75%, which is everyone should be fired for that one. That's just absolutely terrible. When you look at third down defense, 49ers, again, as one of the bottom teams, gave up conversions on 43.1% of the snaps. So that is what the 49ers looked like last year under Coach Nick Sorensen. So we talked about the the run game being a little bit of a struggle for the 49ers. And so I've been going back and evaluating what the Jets were doing under Robert Saleh. And one thing that he's been really good at is having interior run defense play pretty well. And one of the reasons why, Quinnen Williams, whenever you have a big physical defensive tackle like that, and they made sure they continued to put big physical guys in there. Even last year, they brought in Javon Kinlaw. They just wanted to have big physical run stoppers in on the inside to stop that run. So that was something that I had seen Robert Saleh do, and it probably kind of evolved from what happened in 2019, where the 49ers defense was really good at attacking the quarterback. They were really good at getting after the quarterback that year, and of course, that team went all the way to the Super Bowl. But one thing that was deficient for them was the run defense up the middle. They struggled a little bit with DeForest Buckner being on the inside. They gave up 112 yards per game, which is not bad. That would have ranked as one of the better defenses last year. Teams are just not as good stopping the run as they used to be. But there was a definite approach to let's stop the run on the inside, And the Jets only allowed, and I have to go to the 2022 and 2023 stats because 2024, Robert Saleh was out quickly. But you look at the 2023 stats, and they give up just 3.5 yards per carry up the middle, which ranked 7th best in the NFL. So he had an attention to the interior run game. And so here comes the evolution for the 49ers. Last year, under coach Nick Sorensen, they had Malik Collins. He was a starter. They had Javon Hargrave. Neither one of them are really good at stopping the run. They are good pass rushers. Malik Collins is a little bit more balanced than Hargrave. Hargrave definitely more of the pass rush element, more in that Buckner role where he's not going to really stop the run, but he's going to get after the quarterback. And Collins was supposed to try to help with both. But when you got duo blocked and you got double team like that, he just doesn't have the makeup to be able to stop the run consistently, and he would get drove back. And so it just wasn't working for the 49ers. So when Robert Saleh took a look at the San Francisco 49ers defense, I guarantee that was one of the first things he saw, is that they were giving up 124 yards per game on the ground, and a lot of that was right up the middle with those interior defensive linemen getting pushed out. So you have to evolve or you're going to get in trouble. So Robert Saleh says, hey, this worked for us with the Jets. We got big run stoppers on the inside. We got guys who are big and physical and fast. Let's find those guys. And I thought they did a really good job of targeting them in the draft. So they go get Alfred Collins. They go get C.J. West. We know this. They have Evan Anderson. He's a big physical run-stopping individual as well. And they kind of flipped the makeup of what this 49ers defense was over 2023 and 2024, where it was more inclined to rush the passer. So we've seen this defense kind of evolve a couple of times, right? The knee-jerk reaction after 2019 was we need to get better stopping the run on the inside. They went to Javon Kinlaw, and they lost upside when it came to pass rush. He just never was able to get that going. They had DJ Jones. He was able to stop the runs, and Eric Armstead eventually moved inside to help stop the run. But then they decided that they didn't have enough pass rush again later on. And that was when they signed Javon Hargrave. And so what you got was a continual to go back and forth. Well, I think now they've arrived at the conclusion that Robert Saleh is back, that stopping the run is going to be more important than rushing the passer from the interior part of the defensive line. And I love this approach because you can always find edge pass rushers that you can move inside on obvious pass downs, but it's hard to find really good run stoppers for the inside. So I love this focus about making sure we're not going to allow you to run the ball up the middle. And Alfred Collins and C.J. West were two of the best run stoppers that were in this draft. You could argue the 49ers drafted 3 of the top 4 run stoppers in this draft for a defensive line position. Emphasis on stopping the run. That's an evolution change from the last 2 years where it was more about pass rush and getting after the quarterback and finishing games, which we heard John Lynch say a lot, to now it's going to be about getting to third down. That's going to be a key element to this 49ers defense, is going to be getting stops on first and second down and forcing third and longs. And we're going to continue to talk about why that is. Now, one thing that has been a little bit of a struggle for Robert Saleh defenses, Steve Wilks defenses, and Nick Sorensen defenses alike, and it's probably a weakness with this scheme, has been the runs outside. That is something that definitely the Jets still struggled with, were runs that went to the outside. So what do the 49ers have to do to make that better, right? Robert Saleh is a guy that can look at it and say, hey, how do we get better? One thing he did, he went to Green Bay last year in a consultant. He worked with Jeff Hafley, and Jeff Hafley's defense is a lot better at stopping the run on the edge. So maybe he looked at it and got some ideas. Well, some of the things that they do over there with some big physical guys that set the edge in the run game definitely plays. So what do the 49ers need to do to stop the run? Well, you've got to make sure you have a couple of key elements ready to go. Some of it is scheme, some of it's personnel. When you run a wide 9, you shouldn't be allowing plays to get too much outside of you unless they're going to come in and they're going to go ahead and crack you inside and then run outside, which we've seen a lot of teams do. So a crack block, they want to take an outside offensive player, usually a wide receiver or tight end, and they want to bring him in and they want to hit your defensive end and kick him down. And then they want to run outside of him. That has kind of been the method that most teams have been using, and we saw it a lot against Steve Wilkes' defense, and he really didn't have answers for it for most of the time. That's when you started hearing a lot of people, podcasters and content creators and everybody talking about you've got your force defender, you've got your alley defender. It became a focus of conversation because that force defender has to turn the play in, and the alley defender has to come up and make the tackle. And that made it harder on Jair Brown. That made it harder on the 49ers safeties to consistently make those plays. And in 2023, they didn't consistently make those plays. 2024 was even worse because Jair Brown missed so many tackles. But space is the enemy of a defense. You want to keep everything in tight. It makes it easier to tackle. It makes it easier to make plays. So what do you have to do to be better? Well, you have to make sure you can set the edge in the run game. So they get Mikael Williams. This guy can set the edge in the run game, some of the best college football tape when it comes to stopping the run. And they go out and get him. So we fix the interior with these big defensive linemen and attention to that. Now we've got to fix and make sure they can't run on the outside. Nick Bosa, he does a pretty good job at it. The thing he struggles with is the crack, and that's something that they're going to have to make sure they fix. They're going to have to replace. So if you're going to have him blocked, that means your linebacker, and we'll get to them in a second, has to step up and make a play on the outside. So that is what they're doing with setting the edge in the run game. You can do it from the wide nine. And Mikael Williams is really good at that. He's also really good at taking on pulls and traps and, smashing them down and not giving up too much space. So this is going to be an elite player out there. But it's more than that. It's the linebacker being able to step up and force a play back inside with a, replace. Hey, Nick Bosa is now going to account for the inside gap because he's getting kicked down. Now you've got to replace his gap and you've got to get to the outside. So they made sure they have hyper athletic linebackers. This is something that Robert Saleh needed to do for a couple of reasons. Is number one, you have to have that sideline to sideline speed. That was one thing Dre Greenlaw added. That's one thing Azeez Al-Shire had added to this defense through the years, was the ability to run to that outside and be able to replace those and make those plays and become the new force defender for your defense. And so that's what the 49ers had to do, and that's why they drafted Nick Martin. They have D. Winters, another hyper-athletic fast guy, but they also go out and they sign Chaz Surratt, who's done it for Robert Saleh before. So that is part of the focus of getting those guys, Mikael Williams and Nick Bosa, to set the edge. And it's not just them, but it's also Yetur Gross-Matos. He's going to be expected to do it. And then either Sam O or Robert Beal Jr., setting the edge is going to be a key element because, like we talked about, this defense's focus is to get it to 3rd and long every single drive. This is one of the main things. And the 49ers are going to try to be like the Jets were in 2023, where the Jets only gave up about 22.5 yards per drive. So they were limiting the effectiveness. They were allowing 2 first downs per drive, and that was it. And then they were getting the ball back. That is effective in not just field position, but effective in preventing scoring opportunities. That's why it's so important to win on 1st and 2nd down. I think that's what you see the attention to for the 49ers defense. Now, those linebackers that I talked about that have to run sideline to sideline and be forced defenders in the run game, they also got to be able to cover. Because one of the weaknesses of the San Francisco 49ers defense under Robert Saleh, and one of the weaknesses that still hit them in 2022 and 2023 with the New York Jets, was covering tight ends. Now, in 2023, they finally figured it out. They covered tight ends better down the stretch, the last half of the season, than they did any other time. And it also came with the emergence of Jamien Sherwood. So having the right guy to be able to cover, having the right guys in zone to be able to cover, and not have any mix-ups in coverage is going to be huge. And so that's why having, once again, hyper-athletic linebackers that can help in the run game, but can also cover tight ends is going to be immensely important for this 49ers defense. But that's why it's evolved from, Robert Saleh recognizing what weaknesses are and then countering those and being able to make up for those weaknesses with either certain personnel or how he schemes it up. Now, another problem for 49ers all through the years, whether it's Robert Saleh, Steve Wilkes, whoever, it didn't matter, and the Jets, has been scrambling quarterbacks. They have really struggled with that. Now, the Jets got better at this throughout Robert Saleh's time, but it was when they got more athletic at linebacker, when they got more athletic on the edge, getting more pass rushers on the field. So the 49ers are going to have an emphasis on keeping guys in the pocket. Now, when you look at the NFC West, it's just the outlook on that. Sam Darnold can move around the pocket, but you don't worry about him consistently beating you with his legs. He can do it, but he's not a scrambler. The one pure scrambler is going to be Kyler Murray, and you're going to have to keep him in the pocket with a disciplined rush plan, but also those athletic guys on the outside that can go ahead and get it done. So getting pressure early is going to be a key element to making sure you keep scrambling quarterbacks in check. And I think they've figured out the right way to do that by getting a hyper athletic Mikael Williams and a Bryce Huff that can close on the outside and having athletic guys like Yetur Gross-Matos. And I know Matos is not the best athlete compared to the other guys, but athletic enough to where when you move him inside on obvious pass downs, you've got some guys that can really move around and generate some pressure, but also keep some run lanes. So I think scrambling quarterbacks is something that they've figured out for sure. So I'm excited about that objective for the 49ers and then figuring that out. Now, coverage schemes. This is one that Robert Saleh has evolved a lot, and I think one of the bigger question marks about what he's going to run in San Francisco. I think that I have a pretty good idea of what we're going to see from Robert Saleh because of reading the tea leaves of some of the players that he signed. But when you evaluate what he has done throughout the years, it was very cover three, single high safety, Seattle Seahawks style defense when Robert Saleh first came to San Francisco. That was the defense that Kyle Shanahan wanted his football team to run. It was something he struggled with dealing with. Is one of the most difficult defenses for him to deal with as an offensive coordinator. So in turn, he wanted to run that because it was effective. Now, through the time process that Robert Saleh was running that defense, he did get a little bit more versatile and running other things, whether that was man coverage, a little two here, sometimes some quarters. And then the evolution of the quarters defense took off with Vic Fangio being able to slow down Sean McVay's defense right during Robert Saleh's time in San Francisco. And it definitely put quarters and match quarters into a situation where it was more used in the NFL than a lot of the defensive coverages and maybe all the defensive coverages. I haven't looked at the stats on that, but it is used a lot now because of what its effectiveness against 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. And that was what made it a little bit more easier to run. So I do expect Robert Saleh to continue what he had done and evolving into running more quarters. Now, that's not a huge change, actually, from the 49ers. The 49ers have run a lot of quarters over the last couple years. The one difference is I don't believe Robert Saleh is going to man up every single third down and just let his players go compete on the outside like Nick Sorensen did. Nick Sorensen lacked creativity when it came to third down, especially. He just came up and it was man. And I'll say this. A lot of times it was third and short. They did not force very many third and longs because of the lack of run stopping. But you can't come up and just run these, one-on-one man coverage looks, zero coverage, and expect your guys to win, play in and play out. Offensive players are just too good, and offensive play callers are just too good scheming it up. They're going to put you in some tough situations. They're going to get you in a bunch look, which creates friction, and they're going to have some rubs, and they're going to get somebody wide open. They're going to get someone off the ball. They're going to be able to create a natural rub, get some separation. They only need a few yards. It makes it entirely difficult when you are not willing to be more versatile with your coverage. Robert Saleh is going to be more versatile. And we've seen him have a lot of success throughout his time in the league, running the cover 3, running the cover 4. And I think you're going to see a hybrid model. Now, in the Jets, he probably ran more man coverage than he probably will in San Francisco this year because he had Sauce Gardner, he had DJ Reed. Those guys could handle man coverage. But the 49ers have went out and made a little bit of an adjustment with some of the guys that they've been able to draft and or sign over the last couple years. So they do have guys that are more capable of running man coverage, will be better in man than in previous years where it was pretty much just zone or bust coverage corners. You look at Deommodore Lenoir, he's pretty good at press man. He's not bad. You look at Bernardo Green, he did that a lot at Florida State, and he's got that ability to do that as well. They signed Trey Brown. That's another guy that's been really good when it comes to press man. In fact, his rookie season in Seattle, he was one of the better players in the league before he got hurt. playing press man. He's got that ability. You look at Dallas Flowers, who played for Gus Bradley with the Colts, another press man corner. So you got a pretty good emphasis that they're going to run some press man. They're going to run some cover 3, some cover 4. I think it's going to be pretty eclectic of what they're going to be able to do. And I love that fact that they're going to be versatile when it comes to coverage schemes. But I would say I expect to see more cover 4 from this 49ers defense than we've ever seen for Robert Saleh. And that's an evolution, but it's also taking care of some of the trends of the league. And we know he's got some things up his sleeve as well. Next up is going to be pass rush. And this is going to be so important. We talked early about getting to 3rd and long. You get to 3rd and long, you have the right coverages. Now you've got to be able to get home and close. And the 49ers have put so much emphasis on getting guys like Javon Hargrave, right? Having these guys that can rush from the inside like Malik Collins when you move on from Eric Armstead. But now we're seeing them go back to a kind of different way of doing things, which I love, evolving a little bit on how you're going to handle pass rush, is not worrying about those defensive tackles having to produce pass rush on 3rd down, but going out and getting some defensive ends that can rush from the inside so that way you can generate pass rush through personnel reasons. And one of the things that the 49ers did was get a guy, Mikael Williams, who can rush from the inside, while also knowing they already had a player that they signed last year for this particular role in Yetur Gross-Matos. So last year they had a thought process of let's go get that Arden Key role. And this has worked out for the 49ers since Robert Saleh was there. It was a role before Arden Key was ever even with the 49ers. Robert Saleh loved to take Eric Armstead, who was playing a base defensive end for the 49ers. He used to play outside. Move him inside on obvious pass downs and insert D Ford to be able to rush the passer. That is something they did for a long time. Armstead was the original player that played that role. Of course, Arden Key kind of capitalized on it and became the key role because of what he was able to do when he came to San Francisco. But they also had Charles Omenihu that did it. Well, last year it was going to be a return to that with Yetur Gross-Matos, and Gross-Matos was injured, never really never really got that opportunity, and I think injuries overall prevented him from playing inside as much as they wanted to. Now, on 3rd and long, Robert Saleh's got defensive ends at his disposal to be able to generate pass rush and also help you occupy the quarterback's attention, because now he can't scramble as much because you have athletic guys that can close gaps a little bit quickly. Even the defensive tackles they got, Alfred Collins, a 4.95. CJ West, a 4.95. They're hyper athletic on the inside as well. Not quite as athletic as Mikael Williams, who runs a 4.6, or a guy like Yetur Gross-Matos, who runs a 4.6. Those guys are definitely a little bit more athletic, but they're going to be able to generate pass rush with that NASCAR package, the evolution of the defense. And we've seen it a lot with the New York Jets, right? He got Jermaine Johnson. He had Bryce Huff. That is part of the reason that they were able to generate so much pass rush. They even added more pass rush after that with Will Anderson. Will McDonald. And so they had guys that they could put in there together and generate pass rush. And I think they're going to do that. The other thing that Robert Saleh is going to add, and I had a cool stat, I'm going to have to find it real quick, is the blitz packages. And so Robert Saleh doesn't blitz a lot, but when he does, it's pretty athletic. Pretty effective. So a normal rush, he did it mainly on when it was almost 8.95 yards to go, or pretty close to it, 3rd and long. He likes to not blitz. He likes to play coverage. In those situations, they usually gave up an average of 5.15 yards per attempt, which means they got off the field, and they held the quarterback to a 60.4% completion rate. So they did a pretty good job. Yeah, we'll give up a completion, but it's below the sticks. We get off the field. Saleh really good at that. When it came to blitzes, he blitzed when it got close to 7 yards or under. That's when he brought the blitz. Now, quarterbacks were completing the passes at 57.6%. Still, they were able to get off the field most of those times, and they were able to generate 11 sacks in those 96 blitz situations, which means that's a 77.3 rate. When it came to just covering on those situations, they generated 16 interceptions and 37 sacks. So gives you an idea. They were closing in so hard on getting to the quarterback. They were crazy. And in that season, 2023, they were ninth in pressure rate. And of course, we know this is Bryce Huff's big year. Ninth in pressure rate, seventh in sacks, and fifth in rates of opponents' drives that ended in a score. So they were just really good. And it's this method of stopping the run, forcing third downs, that was really effective for them. And that's why I think this evolution is going to continue. And why do I think they're going to run more blitz packages? Well, number one, D. Winters is a great blitzer. That is one of his things from TCU. But also Upton Stout, crazy good blitzer in college. You look at Jason Pinnock, really good blitzer. In fact, the best blitzing safety in the NFL last year, and it's not close. Look at his PFF ranking. He was really good. So you've added elements that are going to make those blitz situations, when you get to 3rd and 7 and lower, maybe Robert Saleh dials it up. It's not going to be very often, right? Only 96 times they did that. That's something he doesn't like to do. But when he picks a moment, they usually get home, and everyone remembers the Shark. 49ers have been missing that element of that nickel corner that could get home, that safety that could get home on the blitz. We haven't seen that be as successful with the other defensive coordinators since DeMeco Ryans, really. And Robert Saleh is going to bring that back into the fold. Now, third down defense is going to be very important as well. You got to get off the field on third down, and the Jets were really good at getting off the field on third down. That is something that they have been very effective at. In fact, they got off the field. That was red zone defense. Let me see right here. I'm trying to, I had my stat right here. There it is. Third down defense. The Jets were right there in the middle. They gave up conversions at 37.2%, which was 13th best. Still would have been a lot better than the 49ers. So that is going to be the method. And that was part of the reason they brought in Brandon Staley last year, was to try to get their third down defense off the field. And now they've got the method, right? We're going to stop the run early. We're going to force third downs, and then we've got the closing group with Nick Bosa, Bryce Huff, Yetur Gross-Matos, Mikael Williams, that we're going to put pressure on the quarterback with 4. If it's 8+ yards, we're getting after you. If it's 7 or below, we might bring a blitz. And so you're getting a method to what they're going to do. But that's something that Robert Saleh was really good at, is getting off the field on third down. And that's an area the 49ers have struggled with over the last few years, but especially last year, because they faced more third and shorts than I think in previous seasons, where they were continuing to force at least 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. Last year, a lot of 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 1s. And those are convertible third down situations that are tough to get off the field. And the last element is red zone defense. And I brought up a second ago, or actually it was the beginning of the show, that the red zone defense for the San Francisco 49ers was just atrocious last year. They gave up 68.6% of the time they gave up touchdowns. Well, what did the Jets do in the red zone in 2023 under Robert Saleh? They were 7th best. They gave up touchdowns on just 49% of the red zone trips. So under 50% of the time. And that's, some of the teams that, that were atop were really good. You had the Titans, believe it or not, that were 37.7%. But still, that is better. The 49ers, this was their Super Bowl season under Steve Wilkes. They gave up 54.5% of the time they gave up touchdowns. The Jets, 49%. So that would be a huge, just imagine that difference between giving up 68% of the time touchdowns in the red zone to 49. That's even if Robert Saleh got to the 2023 number. It was better in 2022. So this is another element that they're going to be better at. And why do I say they're going to be better at it? Well, number one, they added the guys up front to stop the run in the goal line situations. You're not going to be able just to run up the middle against Alfred Collins and CJ West and Mikael Williams. And you have another guy you could throw in there in goal line situations in Evan Anderson. You can be big, physical, and stout at the point of attack. And so I think that's another area that they're going to evolve in. And so you see the method to what the 49ers did. We've got to stop the run at the middle. We need to get better stopping the run on the outside. We have to cover tight ends, as Robert Saleh was looking through it, scrambling quarterbacks, coverage schemes, being multiple, getting after with pass rush. Bryce Huff, Mikael Williams, Yetur Gross-Matos added to Nick Bosa. The blitz packages, you add Upton Stout, who's a good blitzer. You add Jason Pinnock, who's a good blitzer. D. Winters, a good blitzer. And so you can get off the field in those situations. Be better on third down. That's something that Robert Saleh is going to bring because it's not going to be man coverage every single time. But they did make sure they could run it if they needed to. And then your red zone defense, which they know they got to be better at, but they've added the players and now they've added the coach. That's how this defense is going to evolve. They've made a strategic plan to go do it. Now, the rookies have to hit, right? I mean, Alfred Collins, CJ West, Mikael Williams, Nick Martin, like these guys have to hit. And there's other guys as well. They're counting on Upton Stout. And so there's definitely elements to this that are going to make this either a hit or a miss or maybe a little bit in between. But they've definitely went through and evolved this defense from what it was. This defense is not the same defense that we saw in 2024 especially, but it's not as same as 2023 or even 2022 with DeMeco Ryans. This is a new incarnation of Robert Saleh's defense with a hyper focus in certain areas. And so it's going to be fun to see it play out. Let me know what you guys think about the 49ers defensive evolution in the comment section down below. And, I think it's just going to be an interesting conversation to see how Robert Saleh does this all year. But the additions of the young guys is going to be very impactful to what happens with the 49ers. So like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.